everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the Healthcare Innovation Podcast. Today we have with us Dr. Vaibhav Kapoor, who is a surgeon by training and now the CEO and co-founder of Pristine Care. Very excited to host Dr. Vaibhav to talk about the healthcare innovation going on in India in general, as well as what's the future of surgery in India. So thank you, Dr. Vaibhav, for taking the time and welcome to our show.
Thank you, Purav. Great being here.
Thank you. So, Dr. Vaibhav, first question I always have to ask you, right? For our audience, if you can give your background and how did you decide from going to a general surgeon to an entrepreneur?
Right. So, I think I belong to a family of doctors. You know, my brother, my father, both are doctors. I belong to Ludhiana, and like any medical student, I had a very similar journey. In becoming a doctor, I did my MBBS. Then I did my master's in surgery, and then I did my fellowship in pediatric surgery, which last happened at Medanta in Gurgaon. So post sort of, when the education was complete, that was the time when my father had said, you come back to Ludhiana. I've been practicing in Ludhiana for long. Meri bahut jaan pehchan hai, so it will be easier for you to set up your practice, right? But you as a surgeon are young, enthusiastic, and you have slight ego. And I said, I don't want to come back to Ludhiana. I'll probably try to set up everything on my own. So I didn't go back to Ludhiana at that point of time. I think during that phase, during my MS and during my stay in Gurgaon, I think I met a lot of people, who were from the non-medical side as well, right? And they brought in a lot of different perspective, right? We as surgeons normally think a lot different. So I'll probably share you two examples here. One is when I was in MS, my guide, Dr. Prashant Thathe is his name, and so a thesis topic, he gave me a thesis topic, right? And the whole idea was ki thesis complete kar lo, so then you are eligible to sit in your exams and everything. But the first day when he came in, he said, I don't care about your thesis. I want you to compete in that best paper session, which is there for postgraduate students at state level and then at national level. So first conversation, I thought that he just wanted to, sort of pump me up. So I technically ignored it. But 3 months down the line, he again checked with me, have you started doing any research paper or something which you will present probably at a state level, at that time, the All India Surgical Conference and all that. So at that time, I felt that he was serious about it. So he just said, I'm not going to sign on your thesis if you don't compete there. So again, I started to work on that. So at that point of time, it was not about that, okay, you have 4 or 5 fellow postgraduate colleagues, you have to compete with them. But the whole idea was that you have to compete at state level or at national level. So that was the first mindset shift, which I had. And in my second year, I competed at state level, and I think for PG students at that point of time, these paper presentations are very important. So I won first award in my state at Maharashtra there. Then the following year, I competed at national level, and I won the best paper award there as well. I think so that was the first influence where, just from a thought process that you are going to practice to thinking that you can do something at a national level, right? And then when I came to Gurgaon, here I met a lot of colleagues or friends, who were sort of not in medical field, but were thinking, very differently, right? For example, my co-founder Harsh, he's my, of course, a very close friend. He was at Urban Company. So normally when they were discussing things, they were discussing here, 10,000 kilometers dur hum service kaise dein? How do we ensure that our customer is getting the right kind of service? And as a doctor, you would never think like that. You will feel here, you want to make your own hospital, and probably 5-10 kilometer radius में सब patients को आपका नाम पता होना चाहिए, and you will be able to serve those 5-10 kilometer radius, right? But they say that you start thinking or behaving like people who surround you. So I think I met a lot of entrepreneurs at that point of time, people who had very wide thinking, right? and hence my view from just thinking of building a small hospital to probably doing something at scale came in, right? And of course, being in the medical field for last 5-7 years, during my postgrad and then before I started Pristine, having done enough surgeries, I think pain points भी काफी clear थे. We had very clear idea what are the problems, whether it was on the hospital side or patient side or doctor side. So I think that's how probably my journey from just being a doctor to shifting and thinking to do something at large scales actually shifted. Yeah.
Got it. It's fascinating, Dr. Vaibhav. Many people aspire to do this, but not everyone is able to make that mental shift. So fast forward from that time to today, right? What are you guys doing at Pristine Care? What are you trying to solve? Like everyone has an outsider's view, but to hear from the horse's mouth, what are you trying to solve today?
Right. So, before we started Pristine, so we are three co-founders at Pristine. I am there, Dr. Garima, she's a gynecologist, she's there, and Harsh, are very close friends. So we've known each other for the last 30 years. We went to kindergarten together, so the bond is really strong. So even before when we started Pristine, I was doing active surgeries, Dr. Garima was doing active surgeries, and we would have done close to 10-15,000 surgeries amongst ourselves. And having seen the government sector, the medical college, the corporate sector, we were sort of able to pinpoint problems really well, right? So I feel there are three major pillars to healthcare in India. One is, of course, hospital. Second is doctors, and third is patient themselves, right? So if we think about these individually, right? In India we say that we need more hospitals, right? But the dilemma also is beyond a certain large corporate hospitals, rest 80-85% of the hospitals, they work at a 20-30% utilization capacity. So jitne existing hospitals hain, they are severely underutilized, right?
Correct.
So it's a genuine problem, right? And we continue to say we need more hospitals, but the fact is existing hospital supply khali padi hai, right? That is also a truth, right? Second, we definitely say we need more doctors, right? And of course, when we go in tier 3, tier 4 towns, it is absolutely true. But wherever there are existing doctors, right? आप किसी भी सर्जन के पास चले जाओ, किसी भी फिजिशियन के पास चले जाओ, किसी भी प्रैक्टिसिंग डॉक्टर के पास चले जाओ, they need more patients, right?
They do.
Everyone says, I have bandwidth to see more and more patients, right? So somehow, as doctors, we are not trained, into those skills of, marketing, of, how to sort of acquire patients and everything, right? We are just trained into the medical side, how to do your good OPD, how to do your good surgery and post-op care and everything. So I think we could clearly find doctors struggle, to sort of see how can they reach out to patients faster and in a better manner, right? So that was a genuine problem at hand, right? And third problem was, of course, related to patients. So, if you compare healthcare with any other sector, and especially over last 7-8 years, right? Thanks to Zomato, Swiggy, Amazon's, Flipkart's, Ola, Ubers of the world, customer expectations have taken a tectonic shift,
Yes.
right? Now today you don't go to buy grocery, you know that grocery can come in 10 minutes to your home in the morning, right? You don't want to drive, you'll probably order a cab and the cab is going to come at your place, right? And they're very transparent pricing, right? You forgot to take your lunch to office or to hospital, you can just do a Swiggy or a Zomato, right? You don't want to go to a mall to buy equipment, you'll probably do a Flipkart or Amazon and the thing is going to come, same day or next day to your place.
Correct.
So, people have found convenience in everything, and this convenience is not just for the super rich, it is also for the common man, the middleman, and everyone, right? Even probably the work, the maids who work in your house also use these services. So people across, hierarchy are looking at convenience. And what we understood was in healthcare, the convenience was still missing, right? Already, surgery is a trauma for patient and for family, but then to go through that surgical process. How do you find the right doctor? How do you meet him? How do you get your pre-surgery test done, blood test, radiology test? Then how do you sort of get everything aligned in the hospital? Then your post-surgery follow-ups and everything. So all this is very tedious and very broken because there are multiple touch points. So we said, let us, we have a clear patient problem where patient is looking at convenience and high quality care. So I think these three problems were very clear to us, and we said, let us solve for these things, right? So that is how a Pristine basically started.
Dr. Vaibhav, if I'm a patient, right, in future, looking at surgery, what is the future of surgery for me? If I come to Pristine or an equivalent company, what is the experience that companies will get to me as a patient in the future?
Right. So see, for patient, it is all about getting high quality care and getting, it at a most convenient, thing for patient and for family, right? So that is the prime area of focus. So when a patient comes to Pristine, right, he's assigned a dedicated care coordinator, right? So the first time when a patient calls Pristine, a care coordinator talks to him, understands his concern, and then assigns him the nearest doctor. So Pristine works in a manner where Pristine has its own clinics. So across India, Pristine today has close to 250 clinics. These clinics are physical spaces. They are CE licensed clinics of Pristine Care. A typical clinic will have 2 to 3 chambers. Most of the doctors who work with Pristine, they work full time with Pristine, right? And they're all specialists and super specialists. They will be laparoscopic surgeons, general surgeons, gynecologists, plastic surgeons, urologists, ENT surgeons, vascular surgeons, right? So all of these surgeons will sit in the clinic, right? So patients who come and see these doctors, they will come to the clinic, see the doctors in the clinic. If the patient is in the early stage, he will just be written medications. If a patient needs a surgery, right, and doctor has advised surgery, so this care coordinator who had got in touch with, who had booked his OPD, is now going to arrange for all his pre-surgical clearances. This will include blood tests, this will include laboratory tests, this will include diagnostic tests, this will include his insurance clearances and financial clearances working with the hospital. So patient avoids making multiple visits to the hospital just to check whether his insurance clearance has come or not.
I see.
So Pristine is going to help them there. Now on the day of surgery, Pristine sends a cab to patient's house. Patient sits in the cabin, cab drops the patient to the hospital. Now inside the hospital, there is a dedicated, either care coordinator or through our tech systems, where patient's admission time is brought down to close to 10-15 minutes, right? Because we send the patient documents one day prior, just like at the airport where you do a prior check-in a day before so that you avoid the queue. Similarly, we have tech integrations with the hospital where we send patient data one day prior, and patients are able to get admitted faster. So the same doctor who had seen the patient in the OPD will do the surgery in this hospital. Post-op patient, Pristine will help the patient in the discharge. We'll drop the patient back home. Then every time a patient wants a follow-up is going to happen in the clinic, and it is going to be free of cost. So for patient, Pristine not just brings high quality surgery, but also brings in a lot of convenience in the overall end-to-end process, right? So that is the major thing which we do for the patients. Plus all the surgeries which happen in Pristine are of the highest or the most advanced techniques. So even when we go in a tier 2, tier 3 town, and we find some of these hospitals don't have the latest equipment. So Pristine buys those equipments ourselves. So we'll buy lasers for proctology, we'll buy holmium lasers for kidney stone surgeries, we'll buy laparoscopic instruments ourselves, so that even in a tier 2 town, patient gets the same advanced surgery done, for which he had to travel to a metro town. So that's how we are also bringing that equitable healthcare everywhere. Yeah.
Dr. Vaibhav, you mentioned quality a few times, right? How do you ensure quality at scale? Because in surgery, people are really afraid. This is the most pertinent question. So what do you do to ensure quality at scale?
Right. So, Dr. Purav, when we were studying why probably a mid-sized hospital is not able to generate enough patients, there were 2-3 aspects to it. One was probably a patient doesn't have enough trust on that hospital, right? That hospital will maintain the highest quality, or the hospital will probably have the highest level of equipments, right? Because these mid-sized hospitals are generally either a small organization led, or probably a doctor couple or a single doctor led hospitals, right? So what we realized, that these hospitals needed a quality upgrade. So at Pristine, we have a team of QCI consultants, right? So when we
Okay.
onboard, so there is a definitive checklist, on which we onboard a hospital. Post onboarding that hospital, we send this team of quality consultants to the hospital. So in these hospitals, these quality consultants train the OT staff, they train the OT technician, they train the nursing staff, they train the ward staff, they train the GDS staff on all the latest protocols, right? What if a patient has a fall? What if a patient has an allergic reaction? Is your emergency tray ready? How do you do a sign in or a sign out technique in the OT, right? So Pristine ensures that all these hospitals up their quality standards, or we retrain them every week on these things, because especially in these allied health professionals, there's a lot of attrition as well, right? So we continue to ensure that the quality standards are maintained. Second, now these hospitals might not have access to latest equipments, right? For example, a hospital whose owner is a ENT surgeon, he might have all the equipments for ENT, but he might not have equipments for laparoscopy, he might not have equipments for kidney stone surgery. So Pristine buys those equipments ourselves, and we place these equipments in these hospitals. Now, if you or I am a patient, I know this hospital quality standard is up. The hospital is going to operate me with the same most advanced medical technology, and the doctor is the same, right? If I am the surgeon, I am going to operate him in a corporate hospital, I am going to operate him in a mid-sized hospital. So patient identifies, okay, all these parameters are met, so I'm going to get a high quality surgery, plus I'm going to get a lot of convenience in place, right? And
Understood.
the trust on these mid-sized hospitals increase, and then a lot of patients, because you would also realize, for secondary care surgeries, right? Like in US, they have ambulatory medical centers or ambulatory surgical centers, right? You don't have to probably go to a tertiary care center for a secondary care surgery, right?
Mm.
All these kinds of surgeries actually can very well happen in a mid-sized setup, the secondary elective surgeries. So hence we are able to sort of bring in patient trust in these mid-sized hospitals.
So, Dr. Vaibhav, on that, so if I'm a mid-sized hospital owner, let's say I have a 60-bed, 80-bed hospital, which is running, let's say, okay, 30%, 40% utilization. Typically, that's how it is. What is in it for me to work with Pristine? Like maybe through an example, if you can tell us like how you helped 1 or 2 such hospitals.
So, like I said, like I just explained, first is, as a 60-bedded hospital, there is a team of quality consultants coming who are on Pristine's payroll and training your staff every day, right? Or almost once a week, right? So it is not just helping Pristine's patients, it is also helping your own patients.
I see.
If staff is getting upgraded in their skills, right? Second, hospital doesn't have to invest in all the latest equipments. Pristine is doing it, so and that is enabling the hospital to do the most advanced surgeries, right? And these are generally portable equipments. So if you have 3 hospitals in one region, so the equipments can be taken to all the 3 hospitals, so the optimally utilization can happen, and hence the cost reduction can happen at patient side. Third, now hospital has excess spare capacity, right? They have the OT, they have the rooms, they have the technicians, they have the nurses, but they are relatively free. So Pristine says, I'm going to bring my own patient, I'm going to bring my own surgeon, and I'm going to utilize your infrastructure. So when I utilize your infrastructure, there's a percentage share which hospital earns. Now this, income for the hospital directly adds to their bottom line, right? Because we're not asking hospital to incur extra costs. Since we're utilizing their facility better, they are able to earn higher, than what existing they are doing.
And is the inflow for hospitals predictable that I will get probably 20% utilization on an ongoing basis from Pristine. Is it
Yes.
predictable?
Yes. So for most of the hospitals, it is, now that, in areas where we are present for more than a year or so, a hospital
I
understands
see.
that, from 30 to 50 to 100 surgeries, depending upon the size, I'm going to regularly get month on month from the, Pristine.
Got it. And then the last piece which I wanted to cover, the last stakeholder is the doctor, right? If I'm
Yeah.
a young surgeon, Dr. Weber, what is in it for me to engage with Pristine? How do I engage with Pristine? How does it change my career?
Right. So see, the most important thing is when you become a consultant, right? Either in a larger corporate institute or when you set up your own practice. The basic thing is you understand that you've now operated upon probably thousands and 10 thousands of patients, and you are confident in doing your own practice. That is the basic premise, right? If
Correct.
when I left, I was in Max Hospital, and when I started Pristine as a clinic, right, the first biggest worry was, how will I get patients, right? I was starting my practice in Gurgaon. There are so many larger hospitals in Gurgaon, right? uh, why will a patient come to me, right? And I think a lot of surgeons, and not just young surgeons, any competent surgeon, whether he's in his early 40s or late 30s or probably nearing 50, whenever they have to start their own practice, this is a basic question which comes in their mind: यार patient कहाँ से आएंगे,
Correct.
right? So one, since we have a distributed ecosystem, all these doctors join Pristine as consultants only, right? And there's a very strict criteria of how we hire, much similar to how I was hired at a larger corporate hospital, right? So we follow that credentials, we follow that criteria of minimum number of surgeries being done and everything. So all these surgeons are very, very competent, right? And these surgeons don't have stress how will they get patients, because that is Pristine's responsibility, right?
I see.
In today's time, when a surgeon joins Pristine, he understands that responsibility of getting patients is not going to be of himself, right? It is going to be of Pristine. So I think it's a very big monkey of the back, right? So I think that is the biggest part. Second, as a surgeon, I know my best skill is how to do an OPD and how to do a surgery. If I can, avoid doing all the allied work, right? Because when I set my own clinic, पेशेंट का प्रीऑथ भी मुझे भरना है, पेशेंट के डिस्चार्ज के टाइम पे फॉर्मेलिटीज भी मुझे करनी है. आई विल आल्सो गो एट द फ्रंट डेस्क कि सर इसका थोड़ा प्रोसेस जल्दी कंप्लीट कर दो. So doctor feels he is getting aligned in a lot of non-surgical work, right? So that bandwidth, we take from the doctor, that okay, you have to just do OPD, you just have to do surgery. All this aligned work will be held, done by Pristine Care, along with all the stakeholders, right from insurance to hospital, involving a lot of technology there, right? So I think this is the second part. Third is Pristine is into elective surgeries, right? So we are not right now catering to any emergencies or everything. So hence, it's not like that probably, I will probably get a 3 a.m. call that probably there's a trauma case and you have to be there, right? So I think post a certain stage, people would want, or as surgeons, we would want that, okay, probably in our initial stage of career, in our practice, we've done enough night calls, enough emergency duties and everything. Probably after a certain stage, we should probably be focusing on high quality work and elective work. So plus, of course, since they are salaried, so all of them, get that assurance that of,
Yeah.
that they're going to get a monthly salary and everything. It's not based upon the number of surgeries they're going to do and accordingly getting paid. So they're on a fixed salary with us.
Got it. So I think that then you're basically giving the surgeons a much clearer career path, and also making them focus on their core and taking off all the non-core burden from them, which makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Dr. Vaibhav, as you do this, right? Like, what are some of the big challenges that you anticipate? Because clearly you are transforming the way surgeries are done in India, making it simple for both patients and surgeons. But what are the challenges that you anticipate, and how do you intend to solve them in next 3-4 years?
I think when you do things at scale, the biggest thing in healthcare is how are you going to ensure safety at every step, right? I think the only thing which will keep my mind ticking is how do I ensure safety when a surgery is happening 10,000 kilometers away, probably, right?
Yes.
So there is a very high focus on, how do you create enough barriers, right? uh, still remain hassle free for everything to happen. So for example, at Pristine, every doctor has moved to electronic health records, right? So since everybody is using electronic health records every day, we are doing 2000 OPDs. We get the record of these OPDs, and we are able to filter out, okay, how many patients actually need a surgery, and we can also figure out the risk profile, right? For example, we have additional tagging in our EMR that any patient who probably is above 50, and has a diabetes or a hypertension or a CAD or a asthma will be tagged in a high risk category. Any patient who's probably had a prior surgery before, right, will be tagged in a high risk category. So use of technology helps you, to sort of get all that information very fast. So suppose, in a city like Bhubaneswar today, 5 patients, OPD was done. I can know, okay, 2 patients are in high risk category, and when we have to plan their surgery, we have to ensure that they are worked very well prior, plus the right kind of a hospital is chosen for that, patient. Because even if suppose a patient is going a small surgery like a piles, but if a patient has a cardiac issue, we need to ensure that the hospital has a complete cardiac backup, right? Because piles is not going to be a problem, but if a problem happens, cardiac problem will be a bigger issue to solve. So technology really helps you to sort of, ensure that you are making enough safety standards everywhere. So that is one of the key things, at which we focus every time. Yeah.
Got it. Also, Dr. Vaibhav, do you face a challenge in terms of scaling the network of surgeons? Are we capacity constrained as a country or not really?
uh, till now we haven't faced that challenge, right? I believe there are enough doctors. We're still there in only 40 cities in India, right? We cover all the metros, and then almost all the cities where we probably, we call them tier 2 towns, which they generally have an airport and everything. We haven't seen any capacity constraints in terms of hospitals or doctors in this region. uh, but surely, as we go further deep, we might have this issue. But again, we are thinking that, if a doctor is working with us, how do we sort of, even if we have to send them to a tier 3 town, how can we do it on a rotationship basis? Because probably a doctor who's learned so much will not be very happy to go and practice in a very remote village, right? So maybe if he understands that he can go on a rotation, probably spend a month there and then come back, so maybe that can work, but it's still a work in progress.
Got it. Well, it's fascinating, Dr. Vaibhav, the work you are doing at Pristine Care and how it will transform the surgical sector in India. We're definitely in need of better utilization of capacity, better utilization of surgeons' time, and at least you have set the tone for doing that in India. As we conclude, Dr. Vaibhav, any parting messages for young people who are trying to work in the sector of healthcare, surgery, trying to do something meaningful? Any message that you would like to give for them?
I think, I have now met a lot of entrepreneurs in healthcare space and outside. Um, what I find is, a lot of times people have a solution, and then they create a problem, and then they say, okay, I have created a problem, but and that is a, I have a solution to that problem. But a lot many times the problem which they are thinking is not a mass problem at all, right? So the biggest learning which I have had is how do you identify the right problem, right? I think the biggest strength of Pristine has been that we were able to exactly pinpoint the right concerns which everyone had, right? So all the, especially in healthcare, all the budding, doctor entrepreneurs who are trying to, sort of see, I think there are a lot of problems which exist. You just have to go to the depth of it and understand it, and then try to solve for it, right? I think that is the biggest thing. And second, ideas, I believe, have zero value unless and until they are executed. So a lot many times, as surgeons, uh, we talk a lot about ideas, especially when you are sitting in a, you know, after your OT in a OT lounge, you are discussing a whole lot of ideas about everything. But the problem is we hardly execute them. So I think because of time shortage, because of whatever things. So I think the whole game is all about execution. If you can execute well, that's it. Yeah.
How do you think of upskilling the surgeons and continuously ensuring that they bring what is the latest and greatest? Like you talked about equipment, how about the skills?
Right. So, we Pristine has recently started with something called as Prime. It is basically Pristine Research, Innovation, and Medical Excellence. Right. The whole idea of this institution inside Pristine is to ensure that one, doctors are regularly upskilled in their surgical field. Second, a lot of other allied fields as well. They continuously get a lot of training, right? So for example, what we are doing is we ensure that all our doctors uh, get upskilled into most advanced technologies. So for example, when we started proctology, all the doctors who come to Pristine, we ensure them they get laser trained, right? Because laser proctology is a relatively new technique, right? All our laparoscopic surgeons, how do we ensure that they get trained into bariatric surgeries, right? All our ENT surgeons now using a cobbulator or a microdebrider, is a additional method of when you operate a tonsil or a fist. So how do they get trained into that? So under Prime, one key focus area is always going to be upskilling these doctors, right?
Mhm.
Second key focus area will be, now that we are operating so much, how do we ensure that all this data is collected well, and then we sort of record it and research it and publish it, right? So another key focus area under Prime will be that we do a lot of publications, right? So that we can talk about our work, right? In medical conferences, we can publish the papers in research journals and everything. So that is also a very high focus area. Also, I realize doctors have a lot of lateral interest as well. So for example, we recently did a webinar on medical legal rights, right? So we called in an industry expert who was, who handles all this medical legal things for the doctors. And when he talked about doctor rights, right, even I was surprised that I didn't knew that, right? So most often, there will be patients, who will probably have a higher tone, or who, you can't always deliver 100% results which a patient expects, right? So sometimes as doctors we get very fearful, but then we realize, when the medical legal expert told that okay, these are your rights, then it eases you a bit, right? So I think that is again a very important part. So we continue to find various things where doctor would need a lot of help, and we will continue to do that.
Got it. And I guess because of your scale, you're able to do this and provide it to the doctors within Pristine
Absolutely.
network.
Absolutely. We do
Makes
regularly
sense.
webinars with some industry experts, the presidents of various associations and everything. So doctors love to hear to their seniors and super seniors, right, on how have they tackled various complications, various surgeries, tricks and trade. So that is of course an ongoing process of Prime as well.
Got it. Makes sense, doctor. Thank you so much for taking your time.